Hey guys, it's Eddie and today I am back with another movie review for you all. Now today's movie that I'll be reviewing is a film that I recently rewatched and fell in love with all over again. So I just wanted to give you my thoughts on this film since I watched it recently and maybe just introduce it to some people that weren't sure about it, haven't heard of it. Maybe I can convince you to watch it. But it is, of course, Guillermo del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth, starring Ivana Baquero, Adriana Gil, Sergi Lopez and Doug Jones. Sorry if I mispronounced any of those names, I probably did. I'm sorry. But this film centres around a little girl called Ophelia, played by Ivana Baquero, and basically it follows Ophelia as she moves with her mother to live with her new stepfather, Captain Vidal, who is a captain in Franco's Spain. This takes place in 1944, so Spain is pretty war-torn at this point. But amidst all this fighting and resistance and the drama that goes along with moving with a particularly horrid new stepfather, Ophelia discovers in the local sort of decrepit old labyrinth that lies just inside the forest that she is actually a princess, and she meets a faun or a fauno, and he tells her that they have been waiting, her father the king has been waiting for her to make her return, and they've opened all these portals into the mortal world to try and find her, and finally they have. But in order to return to her kingdom she has to complete 3 tasks in order to prove herself as a princess. Now I won't tell you any more than that because that would be spoiling the film, but that is just the sort of basis for this film. Now Del Toro allows the set and the fantasy to speak for itself, because I think that the fantasy element in this film is so beautifully crafted, you know, taken from all elements of lore, obviously including sort of Greek mythology with the idea of Pan, but also, you know, really sort of grotesque elements of lore, such as the famous pale man scene. And we'll get into that more a little bit later because that is my favourite scene. But Del Toro's direction works almost like, for me, the narrator in a storybook. It allows you to rake in this sort of visual feast that he's presenting you with all these sort of glamorous sort of fantasy story-like sets and creatures, whilst also racking up tension at a sort of alarming but sort of root you to your seat pace when needed and when required. And I think that he does that immensely well, because there are some incredibly tense moments in the film, and I think the sort of sweeping angles of his direction and the sort of long shots that he uses, particularly in the pale man scene, are genius in completely rooting you to the edge of your seat and really making you fearful for what's going to happen to this little girl. Now, the film focuses on the fantasy, obviously with Ophelia being our protagonist, but there is no sugarcoating the real life horrors that exist outside of it. This is a twisted fairy tale, and amidst the horrific and amidst the sort of still quite grisly fantasy tasks that Ophelia has to get through, there is also the sort of a parallel with the horrific realities of war-torn Spain. And I think that the contrast between those two, the two worlds in the film, is so cleverly juxtaposed. And I love the fact that, you know, even though this film is about, you know, a lost princess trying to make her way back home, which, you know, sounds very sort of light and fairy tale-ish and, you know, typically kind of storybook-like, this film is not that. It really sort of doesn't hold back on violence. It doesn't hold back on the sort of grotesque character of Captain Vidal, her stepfather. The horrors of the outside world are painted bare for you to see, and I think that's what allows you to become even more invested in Ophelia's character and wanting her to complete the tasks and wanting her to return to the princess realm that she, you know, so desires and that she was born to. because you want her to escape the harsh realities of, Spain and the historical context, which I actually love, by the way. I love the fact that it's presented in this historical context, which is obviously a very important modern incident for Spain, and it allows you to keep grounded in the emotion, because I think there is this tendency to, with something like fantasy elements, to just become buried in that, and it can easily run away with you, all these sort of, creatures and sets and all of that. But the fact that Del Toro intersplices the fantasy with the historical context, which is very emotional and it's very real, and this happened to people, it really allows the film to stay earthbound. It doesn't sort of ruin any emotion that you feel towards the characters, because I think the historical context and the fantasy elements, are two elements that are perfectly balanced very well by Guillermo del Toro. I think that, you are allowed to develop an emotional, very strong connection with the protagonist, and create and develop empathy for her and also the people in Spain at this time. I think they're two very, very sort of strange elements that are sort of spliced together, but they work incredibly well. And as I said, you are still able to make very strong emotional connections to the characters, which I think sort of an overbearing of fantasy might not allow you to do, because you get so carried away with the sort of awe and wonder of it. But that is not the case. Del Toro keeps you grounded with the very clever element of the historical context. So that's something that I love. Something that I have to mention, and something that really strikes me every time that I watch this film, is the visual effects. You can't ignore them. Both the faun and the pale man, played by Doug Jones, are unlike anything I've ever seen in a film, I don't think, because they're not CGI. They are sort of visual effects. They are they're crafted. They're not made on a computer. They just have this aura about them that is totally mesmerizing, something that I don't think you could capture if you had, if it was a CGI pale man or a CGI faun. The fact that Doug Jones is in those costumes, and his really crazy but perfectly sort of coordinated body movements as both the pale man and the faun, they allow these weirdly wonderful characters to become more than just a clever costume. You believe in them, and you are absolutely captured by watching them. And I think the pale man and the faun are two of my favourite things about this film, other than the historical context, the story. There are a lot of things I like about this film, but every single time I watch this film, I am constantly fascinated when looking at these two sort of mythical characters. And it's something that I love about the film, and it's something that I think makes it incredibly special. And I think it's one of the reasons why I come back to it as frequently as I do, because I think it's just incredibly well crafted visual effects that stand out, I think, from a lot of others. And the pale man scene is a perfect example of that. It's tense, but the design of the character is so grotesque, so different, and so weird that it's mesmerizing. And I think that's the scene that I'm always excited for. If you've seen it, you'll know why, because it's just utterly sort of ensnaring. You can't help but watch it in total awe and fear and tense excitement. So I think this film has beautiful acting, particularly from Ivana, who plays Ophelia. She, as a child, she has this very sort of wide-eyed awe about her, but at the same time, she has this incredibly strong emotional connection with her mother. Her emotions are raw, and we see them on screen, and we feel her pain when she's crying and she's left with her stepfather, and and when she's struggling to complete the tasks, we really feel her pain. I feel like her acting is just wonderful, and there's something very pure about it, and so you want to see her succeed, and I think her acting is down to that. She's just a wonderful, well, I guess she's grown up now considerably, but she was a wonderful little actress. This film I will probably always keep returning to. It is investing, it is moving, it is beautifully crafted visually, it has some wonderful narrative direction, and I think it's a film that you just simply cannot ignore. It is just wonderful, and I'll always love it, I think. So that is my take on Pan's Labyrinth. I really haven't said anything negative about this film, so you'll probably guess that if I had to give it a rating, I'd probably give it 5 out of 5 stars. I really can't fault this film. It's something that always captures the imagination while also completely seizing your emotions. It's a wonderful, wonderful film. And so yeah, that's it for this review. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Remember, you can always request movies for me to review by commenting below or messaging me on my Tumblr. The link is always in the description, but that's it for now. Hope you've enjoyed this one, and I hope to see you in the next. Bye.